Hey guys, it's Frederik from the FWX podcast. I want to continue with the focus on the Captain America franchise, and I'm gonna talk now about this one, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And you can see some of the lead cast in this movie, mainly Mr. Steve Rogers, Captain Steve Rogers, as Captain America himself, the titular character. And we're gonna talk about one of my favorite genres, because, like I said before, about the first Avenger was very much a genre film in itself, that being a World War movie. And I've said before in that video, in that episode, that I don't really like that kind of movie, but decent movie nonetheless. This movie I like a lot more because I'm a big action, thriller, and spy fan, and this is right up its alley for me. And for that same reason, and also because of the how the movie is and the story and the characters, it remains one of my favorite MCU movies to date. It being in my top 10. And so I'm gonna talk about the story, the characters, and what else is relevant to this movie. And I also have to mention that there are several things from the first Avenger that make a comeback in this movie, and I'm gonna address them when that happens. Also, I have to give you the disclaimer that with moments I might still fumble words, I might have an awkward pause because I have to look something up on the screen. Also, because of that, the screen is gonna get brighter. I'm gonna get brighter because of it, and occasionally I might also swear or not. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, let's get into it. So I said very much that this is also, like the first Avenger, a genre film, a espionage thriller, and so that is where everything begins. Also, you have to there's a timeline for the MCU, and so everything kind of lines up with where we are even to this point in 2025. But that is also if you see all the other projects, all the other movies and TV shows, because in the last couple of years there's also been TV series. And I'm just remembering right now that actually there is a part that I should also talk about at some point when it comes to this franchise, because the Captain America franchise has also seen a TV series in the past couple of years. It's called. I'm gonna have to look it up for a second. Stay with me, folks. In the meantime, I want to say that because of the timeline, a couple other things have happened in this movie. I'm remembering the title. I don't have to think. I'm remembering the title. Anyway, so the series that I'm talking about right now for just a sec is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, which was all about the how Bucky and Sam are dealing with everything that has happened since all the big main events up until then, the snap, the end game, the everything that has happened to them and how they're feeling about it and how they're dealing with it. And it's also partially because Sam Wilson is a black man, also about racial issues in America. And so it's a very strong espionage and social issues heavy TV series. But now I'm gonna get into the movie itself, The Winter Soldier. Also important, those two characters appear in this one, and I'm gonna talk to you about that now. So, you see how it all comes back to it? Okay, here we go. So, in the Winter Soldier movie, it has been 2 years since the Battle of New York. If you've seen the Avengers, you know what the Battle of New York was. It was that the trickster god Loki from Asgard got an invasion force of Chitauri, that's an alien species, to invade Earth, and specifically in New York. So the story starts to take place 2 years after the Battle of New York. And we find our friend Steve Rogers here in the middle in Washington D.C. as he is working for the organization known as SHIELD. And SHIELD is short for the Strategic Homeland Intelligence Enforcement Logistics Division or Department. And he also is trying to fit in because he's a man out of time, basically. I'm not gonna say just somehow, he was literally put on ice to rest. By himself, by the way. Remember that from the first Avenger. He basically sacrificed himself for humanity, for the United States specifically. And so Steve is trying to fit into society, and he is working with people inside Shield, and those are these two. That is Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson, and the Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff, played by Scarlett Johansson. And also a part of Shield that is called Strike, which is basically the assault teams that it has, like the kind of SWAT teams that you see for police, but then for an intelligence agency. And another person that he has to work with that isn't in that picture is Agent Brock Rumlow, who is played in that movie by... Oh, I have a picture of him here. This is a giant cast picture for the next movie that I'm not going to talk about yet, but here he is. He's played by Frank Grillo. Okay. And so we meet Steve in DC at the beginning of the movie, where he is training in his way by running a lot and incredibly fast around the big institutions that they all have, and also the beautiful nature that they have there. I'm saying this as someone who has been to that place in real life, by the way. And so he meets someone that I just said I'm gonna cover for in a later moment. That is this man right here. That is Sam Wilson, played by Anthony Mackie. And he and the both of them meet, and well, Sam Wilson is impressed by the fact that Steve Rogers can hold on so long because of the supernatural experiment that he had to go through. And just a moment later, as he's sitting on against a tree, we meet in this movie Scarlett Johansson's character, Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, who has a joke about a fossil because Steve Rogers is more than 80 years old despite not looking like it. Or maybe it's a different age. Maybe already 80. Something like that. Anyway. So they go on a mission, and he and her go on a mission with the agent, with Brock Rumlow, on a vessel that is in the Indian Ocean, there is a group of pirates that have taken over the ship, and the pirates are being led by a guy named George Batroc, who is a character from Marvel's comic books, who in this movie is sort of a not just a pirate, but more like the leader of, well, pirates in the sense not like we used to know them with cutlasses and flintlocks, but like a legit group that does, what would you call it, raids on ships, even, but in our more modern sphere. Anyway, so they take over the ship. They both show off their amazing skills set. Steve with the shield, the vibranium shield right here, and Natasha in her spy know-how and abilities and fighting technique that she knows from her time of being an agent for the Red Room and being trained by the Red Room. For those who don't know, the Red Room is the operation they used to train Black Widows. And so on the ship, they are there to free all the hostages, including people from S.H.I.E.L.D. And as they're freeing everyone, especially as Steve Rogers is freeing everyone, he finds Romanov hunched over the command room, the control room, as she's gathering intelligence. And he's not exactly fond of people keeping secrets from him, despite working for an organization that deals in secrets and intelligence, as she's extracting data from the ship, from the computers inside the ship. And but everything goes well. They take out the pirates, they extract the hostages, and everyone returns home to Washington D.C. and they go to the Triskelion, which is a huge building close to, or even in the Potomac, which is the river that flows into Washington, D.C. And the Triskelion is the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. And there, Steve confronts director Nick Fury, once again played by Samuel L. Jackson, because he is not okay with the fact that people aren't doing what they are told, what he tells them to do. He doesn't like to be compartmentalized, to be put aside, as he is in control and in command of the mission. And Nick Fury takes him to one of the lower levels through the building, and Nick Fury shows him the 3 huge helicarriers that S.H.I.E.L.D's been building, and that are linked to spy satellites, as they're designed to take out threats. And it is a project named Inside. And so there's a bit of a debrief being what happened, what didn't happen, what could have been better of the mission that they just went to. And Steve, after that happens, returns home. But the fact that it came up that Steve is not okay with the kind of compartmentalization of the mission brings up confused feelings that Fury has himself, and he goes and asks the person above him, besides being the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. But that person is the Secretary of Internal Security, a man named Alexander Pierce, who in this movie is played by Robert Redford. And he goes and asks if maybe there's a way of delaying the project, because ethically, this may not be all what it seems to be. And they have a conversation, and that is as far as it goes to that point. And Fury decides that I need to talk about this with the person that is helping me, and that is Maria Hill, the deputy director of S.H.I.E.L.D., who is being played by Kobe Smulders in this movie. I think I maybe have a picture of her. She becomes also important in that in another project later on that we've seen in the past phase of the MCU. No, I don't have a picture of her. Okay. So Fury is on his way to her to talk with her about everything, and as he is going to her and to talk with her, he is held up by what looks to be Metropolitan Police in Washington D.C. But then he is intervened by a large man, a large masked man with a metal arm. And he is pursued by what seems like police, but isn't police, likely mercenaries. And so he, using his skills as a former soldier, he gets out of there and he goes somewhere. And we cut to Steve Rogers' place, where he comes home, and Steve sees that Fury is here, and he got shot up by those troops that he was fleeing from, escaping from. And so he's pretty damaged, pretty wounded from what happens. And Fury believes that he is being taped or being bugged by someone. And so he communicates with Steve through his phone, through the text chains that he can, just trying not to say anything, trying to make it clear that there is a chance that he's still being bugged, because at this point he's gotten a little paranoid. And so in a moment, I'm catching my words here. So Steve and Fury are communicating back and forth in a different way, a bit more cut off from the grid way. A cloak and dagger will be the term. For those who don't know, cloak and dagger is a way of communicating if you work in espionage. And Fury gives Captain America a flash drive, which happens to have the info that Natasha Romanoff had gathered off the computers from the ship. But right as that is happening, Fury gets shot by a sniper rifle from this armed, masked man that had been following him. And so Steve wants to pursue this guy, and he gets to, because as it happens, one of his neighbors comes in, apparently with a pistol, and this person introduces himself as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and her name is, I'm gonna give you the name now, Sharon Carter, a niece of Peggy Carter. and she's an agent for Shield. She's Agent 13, as she is known by in the comics. And so she takes care of Fury, and Steve pursues this guy, the masked guy with the metal arm, and this guy also shows off what he can do as Steve lunges his shield at him, but he just coldly catches it with his metal arm and tosses it back to him, disappearing into the night. And then the following day, Alexander Pierce summons the captain back to the Triskelion, to the Shield headquarters, and Pierce tries to get the information that Fury had from Captain America, but Steve is not entirely sure if to give it or not. And the reason why Pierce wants the information is because he was the one recommending Fury as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. many years ago. But Steve can only give what he really knows, because in truth he doesn't really know much, except that he has that flash drive. And so he's let go. Pierce lets him go, but not without a forceful taking of the captain. And we see a very cool action scene in the elevator of the Triskelion that Steve, despite being overwhelmed by a lot of people in a tight room, is just one hell of a badass with the serum inside him, that being really showing off his super strength. And he basically clobbers these guys, and that includes our friend, this guy, Frank Grillo's Brock Rumlow. Almost lost the name there. Anyway, so Steve escapes S.H.I.E.L.D. with his bike. He loves to ride not just a bike, a motorcycle. He's a motorcycle fan. And so he escapes the building. There's another cool chase scene with a plane where Steve takes out this military plane with only his brute strength and his shield, his vibranium shield. And so he he goes to, there's a detail I just should have said earlier. So Natasha, there's a couple of things I'm getting ahead of myself here. So right before Steve went to Pierce, as he was summoned, they recovered Nick Fury from Steve's apartment, and the doctor, trying to keep Fury alive, unfortunately has to announce that he died during the surgery. And that gives Maria Hill the responsibility to take care of everything, the funeral and all of that. And in the meantime, Natasha has been gathering trying to gather information, as Steve has told her as they were watching the surgery being happening that there was this guy, this masked guy with the metal arm. And so as Steve returns, escapes from the Triskelion, they made up. And she tells him that I heard about this guy with the mask and the metal arm, in that he is a supposed espionage myth, that they call him the titular name of the Winter Soldier, and that he is responsible for an enormous amount of assassinations and sabotage through the entire 20th century. And so they go to a place in the mall to track. I'm missing the detail almost. So she has the flash drive. She's gotten it, and they go to a place inside the mall, kind of one of those stores where you can just use a computer to find things on the internet and stuff like that, and they use it to track where all of this was coming from. And so they find, through their tracking, a secret shield bunker in New Jersey, and they then use a low profile kind of way of getting out of the mall as they're being tracked by the strike teams. And there's a cute little moment where they're using the public, where they kiss for a moment. She has this moment where she says people get very uncomfortable in public when people are kissing, and so they do that to not lay suspicions upon themselves that they are who the strike teams think they are. And so they get out of there and they go and get a car and they travel to New Jersey. And as they arrive, Steve notices that this isn't just any place. This is the place that I trained at. And it has a name, this place, Camp Leahy. And because it's been so many years, they find that place completely abandoned. And so they get into it and they find what they think was the original SHIELD organization base. And when they dig even deeper, they come into a place where a lot of new technology and innovation, and they awaken a supposed supercomputer that has now holding the preserved consciousness. That's a tough word to say, folks. They find a supercomputer that is containing the consciousness of Arnim Zola from the first Avenger movie, who used to work for Johann Schmidt, the Red Skull. And so the supercomputer version of Zola was almost like a low-rent 80s looking like AI. And he reveals that just after he was captured by the captain during World War II, he was recruited into SHIELD and to reform it from within to make it Hydra, so they could sow global chaos using the intelligence agency. And that is part of an operation called Paperclip, where the Allied forces used scientists from the Nazi side to win the war for them. And Zola reveals that they've been using the Winter Soldier as their main elements to sow chaos. And so we get this huge but also workable exposition from Zola about all the info that they need. Is that if Hydra needs something done, then they have the Winter Soldier do it. And so they learn all of this, and then we get an inbound missile on American soil that threatens to destroy them in the bunker. But luckily enough, they escape, and they head back to Washington D.C. And they realize there's only one person that can do this kind of abuse, like launch a missile on American soil, and that is Alexander Pierce, who they also think has to be the current leader of Hydra. And so Captain Rogers and Romanoff go back to Washington D.C. and they meet up with Sam Wilson that Steve Rogers has befriended, and for help. And also they're wounded by the missile attack on that bunker, and so they get to use his place. And here's the moment where Sam Wilson decides that, you know what, I can help you. I want to help you, but that means that we're gonna have to get something first. And Sam Wilson reveals that he used to be in the Air Force himself, and he used to have this kind of equipment, kind of like an exoskeleton almost, for a wing pack. And that his code name used to be the Falcon. And so the three of them they work out a plan on how to work things out. And so they capture one of the people that has been linked through all of this, a SHIELD agent named Jasper Sidwell, was actually a mole for Hydra. And so they get him after a meeting with a senator from the United States Senate. Not a state senator, but an actual senator from a state. And they force him to confess what this Zola guy has been doing for Hydra. And they do it, well, the forceful way, in that Steve would definitely not kick an innocent man while he's down. And so Natasha does it for him, kicks Sidwell off a building, and Sidwell is then quickly brought up to this building by Sam Wilson, who flies up with his exoskeleton Falcon wing pack that he used to use. And so Sam snatches this guy out of air, gets him back up on the roof, and that makes Sidwell confess everything. And so he tells them that Zola had developed a data mining algorithm that could identify people that could become potential future threats, especially to Hydra. And he rattles off a couple of names, including Stephen Strange, who later becomes an asset to the Avengers team. And he also adds that the people that may become those threats would then be taken out by those helicarriers from Project Insight. And so they get him into a car and they drive away, but then they are ambushed by the Winter Soldier on a highway, and they have this fight that leads onto the streets of Washington D.C. And And in this confrontation, you have Sam, Natasha, and Steve fighting off Hydra mercenaries or security teams or whatever name they have as assault team. And during all of this, Steve comes to blows with the Winter Soldier, proving that he can fight this guy, being a supernatural person himself, having the super strength of the serum. And in a moment, he gets the mask of this guy, of the Winter Soldier, and he's absolutely gobsmacked to see that it was nobody else but his old-time best friend, Bucky Barnes, who he thought to be dead. And the three of them are taken away by the Hydra teams into vans. One of the soldiers that Rumlow has wants to take out Captain America in broad daylight, but Rumlow says to him, "No, don't do that." And so the three of them are taken away in vans, and as they're taken away, they get extracted by Maria Hill, who has been working with Nick Fury for a long, long time. And she gets them out of there and to a safe house, where they learn another big thing that they didn't think was possible, and that is that Nick Fury has faked his death. He's actually still alive. And now he wants to take care of business, and he wants to sabotage Project Insight. But they need to do it in the physical way, because the helicarriers are being controlled by controller chips, and so those controller chips need to be put back in place so that they don't target anyone from that list of potential people that could become future threats. And so Steve makes it clear to Nick that everything of that needs to go, especially those ships. Not to kill innocent people, but that their system, this intelligence apparatus that they have built, is just built on lies and deceit, and that it needs to go. And so Nick Fury capitulates to Steve and says, like, okay, fine, you're in charge, you do what needs to be best. And so they come up with a plan to do it. And in the meantime, Alexander Pierce, the secretary, has the World Security Council over at the Triskelion for the launch of the helicarriers. Helicarrier, tough word. And so they get in to the building through an old way of getting in. And Steve at this point no longer has his former uniform, and so he goes into a exhibit where everything about him and about the war and about the operation that they did is being exhibited. And so he gets the uniform from there, and we get a cute little cameo from Stan Lee, the creator of Marvel, one of the creators of Marvel, saying that he's so fired. And so the three of them, Sam, Natasha, Maria, and Steve, get in to the building. And the World Security Council Pierce gets them into the building, gets them to a place to talk and celebrate the launch of the helicarriers. But then it is revealed that one of the World Security Council people is actually Natasha, who got in through the use a special kind of technology that alters her visage, and she gets to disarm Pierce and to basically disarm the system on the ground. She needs another person, and so we get the dramatic arrival of Nick Fury, who forces Pierce to unlock this database, because you need like expert level clearance to open this thing, but it is only opened through the eyes, and Nick Fury, as you can see in this picture, has only one eye, but then that one had been biometrically scanned before, and so he has this scene where he just removes his eye holder, revealing his old eye. Well, it seems to be dead, but we don't really know that. And so they open up the database, and that gives Romanov the ability to leak everything, which really exposes Hydra to the public. And there's a brief confrontation between the three where she sacrifices herself as Pierce is holding Fury at gunpoint, and Nick Fury gets to have his moments. Then, because of Natasha, that he gets to end his old mentor, who appears to be nothing but a deceitful jerk, and he ends him with, I think it was 2 bullets to the heart. So he shoots Alexander Pierce dead. Meanwhile, you have Sam and Steve raiding the 2 helicarriers and replace the controller chips. But obviously the Winter Soldier is still up there. Bucky Barnes is still up there. And they have a cool couple of action scenes where they fight each other. Sam and Steve with Bucky, who has been brainwashed for so long. He just doesn't recognize his best friend from all those years. But then also, because Sam has a wing pack, there's also cool aerial action scenes with him until Bucky gets a hold of him and tears off his suit, which finally gets Sam into the Triskelion building, as he can no longer do anything upstairs. But they do manage to get those 2 first controller chips into the 2 helicarriers, until Steve gets to the final one, to the final helicarrier, where unfortunately he has to confront Bucky. He has to fight him, but he really does not want to, because he believed in his friend. He believed that he could be a better man, could be better than this, and he tries to get through to him. But of course, because Bucky is so brainwashed as the Winter Soldier, it doesn't go so well, and so they do have to fight. And luckily, Steve, despite having to fight and potentially wound Bucky, gets the final chip into the helicarrier, and he communicates to Maria Hill that, okay, shoot them down, shoot those damn ships down. And so Maria takes action on his behalf and lets the helicarriers destroy each other, which has Steve fight Bucky, as Bucky at this point has really wounded Steve, shooting him in different places all over his body, only for them to meet at the bottom at the last, only for them to meet at the bottom of the last helicarrier, where Steve is really trying to plead with him that you need to snap out of this, please, buddy. But again, he's so brainwashed and so far gone that he does not know what he needs to except beat him senseless. And so he does that. And he says, "You're my mission. I need to end you," basically. But Steve is just like, "No, I'm not going to fight you. I don't want to." It's this really thoughtful, really heartbreaking scene. And the two of them fall into the water of the Potomac River. And Steve is unconscious because of the beating that Bucky just gave him, and so apparently Bucky, in a moment of maybe some recognition of Steve, does retrieve him from the river and gets him out of it before he disappears into the woods. And now that everything is so pandemonious with shields, Natasha finds herself before a Senate subcommittee where she defends her and Steve Rogers' actions. And in the meantime, we have Steve finally recover from what happened, and he and Sam have had this joke at the beginning of this movie where he had been saying as he was running, "On your left," and now for the first time Steve says it to, and now for the first time Steve gets to say it to him again while he's lying completely battered in a hospital bedroom. And so after Steve has gathered his belongings and has healed enough, the two of them meet up with Nick Fury at his supposed gravesite, and they decide to go after the remaining Hydra cells in Europe. But Sam and Steve ultimately decide that they really need to find Bucky, as they think that they can convert him, basically. And we also get a moment where we see that Brock Rumlow, who had a fight with Sam during everything going on the helicarriers, the two of them were fighting. But Sam got it luckily out of the building, while Rumlow was, however, just stuck in the destruction of the Triskelion. And so we have a scene where Rumlow is basically hospitalized, having had a building fall on top of him. Which, by the way, is a sentence that he says in the next movie, in Civil War, that I will come back on in the next video, probably. And then we get another of Marvel's famous after credit scenes, and we get the moment at one of those Europe Hydra labs where a guy named Baron Wolfgang von Strucker is trying to get a superhuman of himself, as he and his scientists are examining and studying the scepter that Loki was using during the Battle of New York to get people powers. And they have two people that do get those powers. And in another one of those scenes, we get Bucky visiting his own memorial that was at the Smithsonian Institution. Goddamn these tough words, folks. Anyway, so that's the Winter Soldier movie. An exceptional movie, I have to say, for Marvel, and especially when it comes to the espionage genre. This is a really good mix of the both of them, both superhero and espionage, filled in with interesting characters and people that you think get along or not, and there's also just a lot of action, and it's just delightful for me as a lover of both those genres. And so, this is where I want to leave you with this movie. Thank you so much for listening and watching. You can like and subscribe. You can also comment if you like. And I hope you share this with as many people as you can. See you in the next video. See you in Civil War.